her child asked a question that broke her heart. "Mommy, why don't you ever smile anymore?" 6 simple words from my 4-year-old daughter's lips shattered what was left of my carefully constructed facade. In that moment, standing in our kitchen with dinner half prepared, I realized my child had been watching me fade away. If you've ever had a moment when your child's innocent question revealed a truth you weren't ready to face, this story might resonate with you. Like and subscribe if you've experienced that gut punch moment when your child sees what you've been trying to hide. Sometimes sharing these journeys helps us feel less alone. I'm Elena, and this is our story. 2 years ago, my life looked picture perfect from the outside. I had a successful career as a marketing executive, a beautiful home in the suburbs, a loving husband named James, and our precious daughter Mia. My social media was filled with smiling family photos, vacation highlights, and carefully curated moments of domestic bliss. Friends often commented on how I had it all together. The cracks began to form slowly, almost imperceptibly. First came the promotion that doubled my workload. Then James's mother was diagnosed with cancer, requiring frequent trips to care for her 3 states away. The pandemic hit, eliminating our childcare options overnight. Financial pressures mounted as medical bills piled up. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I remember the exact moment I realized I was drowning. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was simultaneously on a work video call, helping Mia with her virtual preschool lesson, and texting with James's sister about his mother's latest test results. My boss asked me a question, and I completely froze. My mind went blank. I couldn't remember what project we were discussing or what my role even was. I mumbled something incoherent and quickly turned off my camera, then sat there, heart racing, tears streaming down my face while Mia tugged at my sleeve asking for help with her alphabet worksheet. That night, after Mia was asleep, I told James the first thought I needed help. He looked at me with exhausted eyes and said, "We all do, Elena. But there's no time. We just have to push through." He kissed my forehead and went back to answering work emails. I stood in our bedroom doorway, feeling more alone than I ever had in our 10 years together. The next morning, I put on my makeup, fixed my hair, dressed in my work clothes, and resumed my role in our family production. I became an expert at functioning on autopilot, meeting deadlines, preparing meals, reading bedtime stories, all while feeling increasingly hollow inside. My smiles became mechanical, reserved for Zoom meetings and when absolutely necessary for Mia. I stopped calling friends. Stopped pursuing hobbies. Stopped noticing the changing seasons. Then came that evening in the kitchen, 6 months into what I now recognize was depression. I was chopping vegetables for dinner, my mind 1,000 miles away, when Mia looked up from her coloring book at the kitchen table. "Mommy, why don't you ever smile anymore?" The knife clattered to the cutting board. I turned to look at my daughter, really look at her, for what felt like the first time in months. Her small face was serious, concerned, her eyes searching mine with a wisdom far beyond her years. She wasn't being accusatory, she was genuinely confused by the change in her mother. "What do you mean, sweetie?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I smile." She shook her head decisively. "Not a real smile. Not the kind that makes your eyes crinkly." She demonstrated, squeezing her eyes into exaggerated crinkles while beaming. "You only do this now." She pulled her lips into a tight line that barely curved upward, a perfect imitation of what my smile had become. I sank into the chair beside her, my legs suddenly unable to support me. How had I not realized that while I was so focused on maintaining the appearance of normalcy, my child had been studying me, noticing every detail of my slow disappearance. "I'm just tired, Mia," I said automatically, the excuse I'd been using for months. She put her small hand on mine. "Is it because you're sad? Ms. Jenny at school says sometimes grown-ups get sad and it's not anybody's fault." The simple compassion in her voice broke something open inside me. Tears filled my eyes, and I pulled her onto my lap, holding her close as the sobs I'd been suppressing for months finally escaped. She patted my back awkwardly, repeating, "It's okay, Mommy," over and over, our roles momentarily reversed. When James came home an hour later, he found us still at the kitchen table, vegetables half-chopped, dinner uncooked. I looked up at him with swollen eyes and said, "I need help. Real help. And I can't wait anymore." That night, after Mia was asleep, James and I had our first honest conversation in months. I told him how I'd been feeling, the emptiness, the exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure, the sense that I was failing at everything despite working harder than ever. He confessed his own struggles with his mother's illness and the pressure he felt to support everyone. We cried together, mourning the connection we'd lost while trying to keep everything else afloat. The next day, I called my doctor and made an appointment. I also reached out to my boss and requested a week of emergency leave. To my surprise, she was immediately supportive. "I've been worried about you," she admitted. "Take the time you need. We'll manage." The following weeks were a blur of doctor's appointments, therapy sessions, and difficult conversations. I was diagnosed with depression and started medication. James and I began couples counseling. We had a family meeting with Mia where we explained, in age-appropriate terms, that Mommy was going through a hard time but was getting help to feel better. "Like when I had an ear infection and needed medicine?" she asked. "Something like that," I said, amazed at her ability to understand. "Will you get your crinkly smile back?" she wanted to know. "I'm working on it," I promised. Recovery wasn't linear. There were good days when I felt glimpses of my old energy returning, and difficult days when getting out of bed felt impossible. But having acknowledged the problem, having spoken it aloud, I no longer had to waste energy pretending. That alone was a relief. James and I made difficult but necessary changes. I negotiated a 4-day workweek with slightly reduced responsibilities. James arranged to work remotely when visiting his mother, allowing him to be present for both her and us. We hired a part-time nanny despite the financial strain, acknowledging that we needed support. Most importantly, we started being honest with friends and family about our struggles, which opened floodgates of support we hadn't known were available. My sister-in-law offered to stay with James's mother for 2 weekends a month so he could be fully present at home. My parents started taking Mia for regular grandparent days, giving us breathing room. Friends dropped off meals, sent encouraging texts, and didn't take it personally when I sometimes couldn't respond. 3 months after Mia's question in the kitchen, we were having a Saturday picnic in the backyard. James was telling a ridiculous story about a mishap at work, complete with dramatic reenactment. I found myself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in ages. Mia pointed at me excitedly. "Mommy! Your eyes are doing the crinkly thing." James looked confused, but I understood immediately. I pulled Mia into a hug, my heart full in a way I'd forgotten was possible. "You're right," I whispered. "They are." That evening, I started a journal. On the first page, I wrote Mia's question, "Why don't you ever smile anymore?" As a reminder of how perceptive children are, how they see beyond our carefully constructed facades. I wanted to document my journey back to myself, not just for me but for her. As the months passed, my journal filled with observations, setbacks, and small victories. I noted the first time I felt excited about a project at work again. The evening James and I stayed up talking until midnight like we used to before responsibilities overwhelmed us. The morning I woke up and actually looked forward to the day ahead. I also recorded the harder moments, the panic attack I had in the grocery store, the week when a medication adjustment left me feeling worse before better, the fight James and I had when old patterns threatened to resurface. Recovery wasn't a straight line, but a winding path with unexpected obstacles and occasional backtracking. A year after Mia's question, we celebrated with a family healing day, as we'd come to call our special outings. We went to the botanical gardens, had ice cream for lunch, and took silly photos in a booth. Looking at the strip of 4 images, all of us making increasingly ridiculous faces, I was struck by how genuinely happy we looked. Not perfect, not without worries, but present and connected. That night, I showed Mia my journal. She couldn't read most of it yet, but I wanted her to see the physical evidence of how her question had changed our family. Your question was very important, I told her. It helped Mommy realize she needed to make changes. She considered this seriously. So it was good that I asked. Even though it made you cry. Especially because it made me cry, I said. Sometimes we need to cry to start feeling better. She nodded, accepting this wisdom with the openness only children possess. I'm glad your smile came back, she said simply. As Mia grew, our family continued to evolve. When she was 6, she started asking more specific questions about that difficult period. Were you sick? She wanted to know. Was it like when I had strep throat? James and I had discussed how we would approach these conversations, believing in age-appropriate honesty. It was a different kind of sickness, I explained. Sometimes people's feelings can get sick, just like bodies can. Did I make you sad? She asked, her voice small. No, sweetheart, never, I assured her, pulling her close. You were the light that helped me find my way back. Remember how you noticed my smile was gone? That was so important. As she entered elementary school, Mia developed an unusual sensitivity to others' emotions. She would come home reporting which classmates seemed sad or which teachers looked tired. At first, I worried we'd burdened her with too much awareness, made her hypervigilant about others' emotional states. But her teacher assured us during a conference that Mia's empathy was a gift, not a burden. She notices when other children are struggling and finds ways to include them, her teacher explained. Yesterday, she sat with a new student who was crying at lunch. She told him it's okay to be sad sometimes, but that he wouldn't always feel that way. Hearing this, I felt a complex mixture of pride and humility. My daughter had taken the hardest chapter of our family story and transformed it into compassion for others. When Mia was 8, I was offered a significant promotion at work. It would mean more money but also more responsibility and longer hours. Before my depression, I would have accepted immediately, seeing only the professional advancement. Now, I brought the decision to our family dinner table. This would change things for all of us, I explained. I want us to decide together. We spent weeks discussing the opportunity, weighing pros and cons. James was supportive either way. Mia asked thoughtful questions about how it would affect our family time. I consulted my therapist, wanting to ensure I wasn't avoiding growth out of fear, but also not rushing into a situation that might jeopardize my hard-won balance. Ultimately, I negotiated a modified version of the role with clearer boundaries and a gradual transition. It wasn't the traditional career path, but it was sustainable for our family. My boss, who had seen my journey, was surprisingly accommodating. We want you for the long haul, she said. That means finding an arrangement that works for your whole life, not just your work life. As Mia approached her 10th birthday, she began working on a school project about family stories. She asked if she could interview me about the time I got sad and then better again. I hesitated, wondering if this was appropriate for a school assignment, but her teacher had specifically encouraged students to explore meaningful family experiences. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where she'd asked that life-changing question 6 years earlier, with her notebook open between us. Her questions were surprisingly insightful. What did depression feel like? How did you know you needed help? What advice would you give to other mommies who feel sad? I answered as honestly as I could, watching her carefully transcribe my words. When she asked if she could include a picture of my journal in her presentation, I felt a moment of vulnerability. Was I ready to have this private struggle shared in her classroom? But looking at her earnest face, I realized this was part of our family story now, not a shameful secret, but a chapter of growth and resilience. Her presentation received the highest grade in her class. Her teacher sent me a private email afterward. Your family's openness has already helped others. Two parents approached me after the presentations asking for resources on mental health support. That evening, I added a new entry to my journal, which had evolved from a recovery document to a general life reflection. Today I realized that our hardest moments can become our greatest contributions to others when shared with courage and compassion. As Mia entered her teenage years, our family faced new challenges. James's mother passed away after her long battle with cancer. My father had a minor stroke. Mia navigated the complicated social landscape of middle school. But the foundation we'd built during our hardest times served us well. We had developed a family culture of honest communication, of asking for help when needed, of acknowledging both struggles and joys. When Mia was 14, she came home from school unusually quiet. After dinner, she asked if we could talk privately. My mind raced with possibilities: friend drama, academic pressure, early teenage romance issues. "I think my friend Zoe is depressed," she said without preamble. "She's stopped participating in things she used to love. She barely talks at lunch. And her smile doesn't reach her eyes anymore." I felt a chill of recognition. "Have you talked to her about it?" Mia nodded. I asked if she was okay, and she said she was just tired. "But Mom, that's what you always said, remember? When you weren't okay." The parallel wasn't lost on me. "What do you think we should do?" "I told her about you," Mia said. "About how you got help and got better. I said it wasn't her fault if she was feeling bad, and that adults could help if she let them." I pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by her wisdom and compassion. "You did exactly the right thing." Together, we crafted a plan. Mia would continue being present for her friend while I reached out to Zoe's mother, a casual acquaintance from school functions. The conversation was delicate. No parent wants to hear concerns about their child's mental health, but I approached it with the empathy of someone who had been there. "I'm not diagnosing anything," I assured her. "I just know from experience that sometimes we parents are the last to see the changes in our children because we're too close." To my relief, Zoe's mother was receptive. "She has been different lately," she admitted. "I thought it was just normal teenage moodiness." Within weeks, Zoe was seeing a counselor. The change wasn't immediate, but gradually, Mia reported seeing glimpses of her friend's old personality returning. "She laughed at lunch today," she told me one evening. A real laugh. As Mia prepared for college, our family reflected often on the journey we'd taken together. The question that had broken my heart had ultimately helped heal our family. We'd learned that vulnerability isn't weakness but courage, that asking for help isn't failure but wisdom, that children see and understand far more than we give them credit for. The night before Mia left for university, we had a special family dinner. James had prepared all her favorite foods, and we reminisced about family memories both challenging and joyful. After dessert, I presented Mia with a gift, a beautiful journal with her name embossed on the cover. "This is for your own journey," I told her. "For recording your questions and discoveries, your struggles and triumphs." She ran her fingers over the cover. "Like your journal?" "Similar," I said. "But yours will tell a different story. Your own story." She looked up at me, her eyes, so like mine, filling with tears. "But our stories will always be connected, right? Because of that question I asked when I was little?" "Always," I promised. That question changed everything. As we helped Mia settle into her dorm room the next day, I noticed her carefully placing the journal on her desk, positioning it where she would see it daily. Before we left, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "I'm going to miss your crinkly-eyed smile every day." On the drive home, the car quieter without Mia's energy filling it, James reached for my hand. "We did good," he said simply. "We did," I agreed, thinking of the long, winding path from that kitchen moment to this milestone. Not perfect, but good. That evening, I sat on our back porch with my journal, now filled with over a decade of reflections. I wrote about dropping Mia at college, about the mixture of pride and sadness, about the new chapter beginning for all of us. Then I turned back to the first page, to the